I'm going to be talking about how farm animals like Baba Ganoush on the left, isn't that a great name for a bird, and Julia on the right become meat products, like a bucket of game day chicken or a thing of pork skins. I'm not sure how that's different from pork rinds, but there you go. And I want to start by just making the point that Americans care about animals. About 97% of Americans, according to Gallup, believe that there should be laws to prevent cruelty to animals. 97% of Americans don't agree on anything, right? Even the libertarians think there should be laws to protect animals from abuse. And yet, I don't know what the percentages are. I think various sessions are coming up with various numbers, but something like 95% of Americans are eating animals. And as Dave was talking about, they eat about 8 billion land animals every single year. That's the light blue, which dwarfs the number of animals used for all other purposes combined. Many of us shower love on our companion animals. There are about 160 million companion animals, even as the average American eats about 35 land animals and well over 100 sea animals every single year. And it really does all boil down to cognitive dissonance. It boils down to, I think, a lack of education. It boils down to the fact that people don't see farm animals. So the slide on the bottom is a chicken processing plant. It can slaughter more than 5 million animals every single year. The slide on the top is a Purdue chicken farm. Each of those sheds contains about 50,000 chickens, each chicken with about that much space for her or his entire life. The chicken has a wingspan of 30 to 32 inches, so that, and they'll cram 50,000 of them into each of those sheds, and people don't see it. So the solution, it seems to me, we don't need to win an argument with a meat eater, exactly. We simply need to educate people about the degree to which their current choices do not align with their current values. In order to do that, we need people to understand who farm animals are, and we need people to understand what farm animals suffer through. And that's what I'm going to be talking about. First, who they are. They are birds like Baba Ganoush on the left. They are pigs like Julia on the right. And what we have known since Darwin, and really before, but what Darwin wrote very eloquently about is that whatever species of animal you're talking about, whether it's a fin fish or a mammal or a bird, we're all made of flesh and blood and bone. We have the exact same 5 physiological senses, and we feel pain in the same way, and we feel pain to the same degree. And that's really the founding principle upon which animal rights is built. You know, if you're talking about a being's right to be free from pain and suffering, the morally relevant variable isn't intelligence, it's not speed, it's not eyesight, it's not olfactory senses. The morally relevant variable is that being's capacity to feel pain, that being's capacity to suffer. And what we know to be true is that among mammals, birds, and finfish, we all suffer in the same way and to the same degree. Darwin taught us that. The foremost living evolutionary biologist is Richard Dawkins, the guy on the right. He refers to what he calls speciesist arrogance, this scientifically invalid idea that human beings are the center of the moral universe. And he says it's every bit as valid as the one-time belief that the Earth was the center of the physical universe. We now know that the Earth is not the center of the physical universe. It's time that society caught up with what scientists know, which is that human beings are not the center of the moral universe. This book, we now know also scientifically, so the foundational principle of animal rights, obviously, is that other animals feel pain in the same way and to the same degree that we do. That's not good enough for a lot of people, and one of the things that we are learning, one of the things anybody who comes to Farm Sanctuary learns personally, is that chickens and pigs and cattle and other animals, they are subjects of a life in the same way that we are subjects of life. They are ethologically complex. They're complex in the way that their cognition works, the way that their behavior works, the way that their emotion works. I really like this. Jane Goodall wrote the introduction to this book, The Inner World of Farm Animals, which mixes anecdotes from sanctuaries with scientific evidence of farm animal cognition, emotion, and behavior. And Jane Goodall wrote, farm animals feel pleasure and sadness, excitement and resentment, depression, fear, and pain. They are far more aware and intelligent than we ever imagined. They are individuals in their own right. Looking specifically at chickens, Dr. Leslie Rogers from the University of New England, who literally wrote the book on the chicken brains and behavior. It's called Development of the Brain and Behavior in the Chicken. She says it's now clear that birds have cognitive capacities equivalent to those of mammals, even primates. And Discovery Magazine reporting on a study that showed that chickens have the capacity to delay gratification, which is something human beings develop at about the age of 4. Discovery Magazine said chickens do not just live in the present, but can anticipate the future and demonstrate self-control, something previously attributed only to humans and other primates. And that quote really accentuates, I think, the degree to which ethological studies are not very advanced. That's not saying elephants can't do it or dolphins can't do it, but they haven't discovered it in elephants or dolphins. The first species to be able to demonstrate self-control is the chicken, which also hammers home another point. Animal scientists tell us that chickens and pigs, at least, consistently outperform dogs and cats on scientific tests of ethological sophistication, so behavior, emotion, cognition. Chickens and pigs outperform dogs and cats. My wife insists that the cats are like above the tests. They're busy leading their lives and they're like, not gonna do what the researchers want them to. But the dogs are trying. And it accentuates, I think, also the fact that there's no difference between eating a chicken or a cat, a dog or a pig. And a couple of scientific tidbits from the scientific world about pigs. Dr. Stanley Curtis, former Penn State researcher, taught pigs to play video games, and they outperformed. The dogs couldn't figure it out at all. The chimpanzees could figure it out, but the pigs consistently outperformed the chimpanzees. He said pigs could be as smart as chimpanzees and other non-human primates. Hamlet and Omelette, very creative animal scientists with those names, exhibited more interest in the task at hand than their primate cousins. And Professor Donald Broom at Oxford University, so Cameron Diet, the popular media reporting on Stanley Curtis's research said pigs outperform 3-year-old human beings playing video games. And a scientific advisor to the British government and a professor of animal sciences at Oxford was asked about this, and he said, well, pigs have the cognitive ability to be quite sophisticated, certainly more so than dogs, and certainly also 3-year-olds. So that's a limited introduction to ethology and farm animals. Farm Sanctuary works with the Camilla Center for Animal Rights on a project called the Someone Project, and we have all of the most recent science all of the most recent ethological science broken up by species on our website. So you can either go to Farm Sanctuary and scroll down to education, or if you just Google the Someone Project, you'll come up with it. And this is Julia. So at Farm Sanctuary, we have been providing lifelong care for farm animals for more than 25 years. And anybody who's ever spent time at Farm Sanctuary already knew that farm animals were individuals. And if you come to one of our events, you will find that to be true as well. Julia is a really remarkable pig. We got a call about 2 years ago from an animal control officer telling us that a guy who worked in a gestation crate farm had turned in his boss for basically beating the bejesus out of Julia, the big pig on the right. She was in a gestation crate and she wouldn't move. And the farm manager was beating her and just running the electric prod up and down her back. And this guy pulled out his cell phone and recorded it and went and turned in his boss. And we went with the police the next morning and seized Julia. She had been at our farm for about 8 hours when she gave birth. And that's, yeah, I know. And that's one of her piglets. And as you can imagine, she had PTSD when she came to us. Like, she was terrified of human beings. But within about 6 months, now she is just extraordinarily sociable. She follows people around. She wants to have her belly rubbed. She's really come around through extensive TLC. There she is with her piglets again. I know, isn't she great? I should have just had animal photos. It's a lot better than the jokes that we started with. There's Baba Ganoush. She was a Caparot chicken who came to us about 5 or 6 years ago. And as anybody who spent time at Farm Sanctuary knows, animals have the same range of emotions and personalities that dogs and cats have. And Jean was talking yesterday about the hugging turkey who would like plop up into your lap and crane her neck around your neck, and just extraordinary animals. The thing I love about Baba Ganoush is he lives in the Melrose Animal Hospital, and every time a new animal comes in who's sick, who needs treatment, Baba Ganoush just sits there and basically comforts them and says, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. And these are some turkeys who were just dropped off in the middle of the night outside Farm Sanctuary just before Thanksgiving, and this is Baba Ganoush telling them that they're in their new home and they're going to be fine. If you want more information about how awesome, firsthand information about how awesome individual animals are, we hope you will visit one of the Farm Sanctuary shelters in upstate New York, Northern California, about an hour from Sacramento, and in Acton, so I think about 25 minutes from where we're all sitting right now. You can go online to find visiting and events and other things. The second thing, so we need to tell people who farm animals are, and because the vast majority of people would never eat a dog or a cat, but they would eat a farm animal. We need to break down that cognitive dissonance. And I'm not going to go heavy in depth into how farm animals suffer. I'm just going to talk about a few specific issues. And the first is gestation crates. Gestation crates are how about 83% of mother pigs, this is what Julia was in when she was being beaten and shocked. It's how about 83% of pregnant pigs spend their entire lives. It's a 2 foot by 7 foot crate. The animal can't turn around, they can't take a step in any direction, and psychologically they go insane. It would be like cramming a dog into a crate for her entire life. Physiologically, the animal's muscles and bones deteriorate so that by the time they're sent to slaughter, they all have osteoporosis, and many of them can barely walk. Battery cages are basically the equivalent for laying hens, and this is how 91% of laying hens spend their entire lives. A battery cage is about 18 by 20 inches, so it's, I think I just did 18 by 20 inches. And a chicken has a laying span, as I said earlier, of about 30 to 32 inches. So they cram an industry average of 5 to 6 hens into each 18 by 20 inch battery cage, which means that for her entire life, one chicken cannot spread even a single wing. And again, as with the pigs in the gestation crates, psychologically they go insane. Physiologically, their muscles and bones deteriorate so that when they are what the industry calls depopulated, ripped from the cages to be sent to slaughter or to be composted or whatever fate awaits them, in the best case scenario, when scientists are there monitoring it and the workers know that scientists are monitoring it, more than 1/3 of the animals suffer new bone breaks because their osteoporosis is so severe from being immobilized for their entire lives. So this slide is a slide similar to the earlier slide, except this is chickens as opposed to other land animals. And it's something that I think we as animal advocates should take into account. The fact that we both mentioned that about 8 billion animals are slaughtered every single year for food in the United States. Really almost all of them are chickens. We slaughter about 35 million cattle, about 100 million pigs, and about 8 billion chickens. So the cattle and the pigs are sort of a rounding error in this statistic. We slaughter 100 times more chickens than we slaughter pigs. We slaughter 250 times more chickens than we slaughter cattle. Out of every 100 land animals who are slaughtered every single year in the United States, 98.3 of them are birds. So when we're having conversations with people, when somebody decides they're going to give up red meat, it's worth remembering that if they're eating the same amount of animals, that's actually counterproductive to animal welfare. And this is how chickens spend their lives. As I mentioned earlier, they'll cram about 50,000 birds into this shed. Each bird has about 9 by 9 inches for her or his entire life. And they now grow so quickly, their upper bodies grow more than 6 times as quickly as they did 50 years ago. So they're peeping like chicks, but at 42 to 45 days, their upper bodies are massive. and you walk into one of these farms, which is pretty easy to do, incidentally. You walk into one of these farms, look for the no trespassing sign and pretend you don't see it. No, just kidding. Just kidding. No, actually, journalists consistently just knocking on doors say, I'm writing about the poultry industry, can I see your birds? The people who run the chicken farms are no lovers of Tyson or Purdue or whoever it is that they're growing chickens for. Meat Racket, another really phenomenal book about the surf relationship between the chicken industry and the people who grow the birds. But the chickens now grow more than 6 times as quickly as they did 60 years ago. Their upper bodies, one animal science journal said that if a human baby grew at the same rate as a modern broiler chicken, by the time the baby was 2 years old, she would weigh 350 pounds. That's how quickly these animals are growing. So they're living their lives in just unmitigated misery from birth to death. And the one measly federal law that protects farm animals exempts poultry, the Humane Methods of Slaughter Act. It doesn't really protect any animals, but that's a conversation for another time. It explicitly exempts 98.3% of slaughtered farm animals. And this is a 2-decade inspector with the United States Department of Agriculture. He's a slaughterhouse inspector. This is what he said in October to the Washington Post. This was printed on the front page of the Washington Post. This is about chicken slaughter. It said workers are literally throwing the birds into the shackles, often breaking their legs as they do it. They're working so fast, they sometimes get just one leg in the shackle. When that happens, the chickens aren't hanging right, they don't get killed, and they go into the skull tank alive. So that's modern chicken slaughter. And well, it's certainly better, the so-called free range, so-called smaller. It's still egregiously abusive. And for free range, all of the animals are still completely conscious when they have their throats slit open. It's really easy to watch even Polyface Farms, which is glorified by Michael Pollan, to watch chicken slaughter at even Polyface Farms and watch them sort of laughing as they're slitting the animals' throats open, and then watching them tossing the animals into the boiling hot water for feather removal. Many of them, well, they're still conscious, because it takes about 60 seconds for the animal to bleed out and lose consciousness. At about 30 seconds at Polyface and other small farms, they're tossing the birds into the boiling hot water. They're literally drowning them alive at the most humane. It doesn't sound very humane, does it? But that's about as good as it gets, and it actually is better than that. So if you want more on this, I don't want to just completely down everybody about the horrors of this, and I imagine you're getting enough of these sorts of descriptions and photos already. But Farm Sanctuary put together a video called What Came Before, and it does go animal by animal, telling you what the common farming practices are that Dave was talking about that are by definition legal just because they're done. So I want to end by saying that we all know this, and who was at Ingrid's talk last night? Yeah, just about everybody was at Ingrid's talk. I've heard it probably 15 times, and it just gets me every single time. Her description of you're thrown on the back of the truck is barreling down, the people are going to be killed, you fall out of the truck, you go back to your hotel room, now you know, what do you do? Now you know, what do you do? Do you turn on the TV? Do you go to a movie? Do you read a book? Or do you tell people about it? I'm going to guess everybody in here is vegetarian or vegan, the vast majority of us for sure. As a vegetarian or a vegan, you're saving about 100 animals, well, a lot more than that, but we don't know for sea animals, so conservatively 100 animals. You convince one person by passing them a leaflet to follow you, you double your lifetime impact as a vegetarian or a vegan. You get another, you double your lifetime impact again. Boom, 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 boom. The power of advocacy, the power of speaking up, the power of letting people know what's happening is really the power that we have that is exponentially greater than our power as vegans. And we don't have to convince anybody to believe something new. You know, Socrates was killed for corrupting the youth of Athens by asking them questions and helping them to see that they already agreed with him. Everybody already agrees with us. They're opposed to cruelty to animals. They wouldn't be slitting these animals' throats open. Oh, the 2 points we need to make, sorry. The 2 points we need to make is that there's no difference. You know, I speak to a lot of audiences of meat eaters and I say, would you eat that cat? Nobody ever raises. Well, sometimes if they know I'm going to do that, there'll be a few people who will raise their hands just to mock me, and then I'll say, my wife won't let you. And she won't either, because that's the world's most perfect cat in her eyes. But there is no difference between eating Rena Ray or eating Beaky, between eating Fiona or eating Chompers. And if we're having a conversation with people and we say, would you eat a cat or a dog? They'll say no. And then we'll say, well, what's the difference? And they won't be able to come up with one. And we can have a conversation about who farm animals are. Sure, I just wanted you to see Rena up close. So this is the photos. There are no photos of Percy Shelley, and the illustrations of Percy Shelley are not as interesting as this Percy Shelley is my homeboy shirt. But Percy Shelley said, I want no part of anything I can't write a pleasant poem about. I'm not a poet, I can't write a pleasant poem about anything. But applied to an issue of basic integrity, I really like this, because the vast majority of people would not spend an afternoon slicing animals' throats open. They don't want to see it, they don't want to even think about it. So I think having a conversation with them about where the integrity is in entering into this mercenary relationship wherein you're paying people to do that sort of stuff for you, and how do they feel about that? What do you think about cruelty to animals? I'm opposed to cruelty to animals. What do you think happens on, modern farms? What do you think about slaughterhouses? Would you do that? Well, then why are you comfortable paying other people to do that? It seems to me that, the vast majority of people want to lead consistent lives. So those are the 2 points. You wouldn't eat a dog or a cat. What's the difference? And you wouldn't do these things personally. You probably don't even want to talk about them. So why are you paying people to do them on your behalf? The last thing I want to say is that we're making really good progress in the animal protection movement, and ideas that are true can only be resisted for so long. It's amazing to me to think Socrates said the unexamined life is not worth living 2,500 years ago, and for 2,350 years after that, human beings thought it was an acceptable way for us to interact with one another, that some of us would hold others of us as slaves. And it was considered to be essential. This is how all great societies have thrived. This is what the Bible says. This is natural. Any of these arguments sound familiar? 100 years ago, we passed the 13th Amendment in 1865. We passed the 19th Amendment giving women the right to vote in 1920. So 94 years ago, there was a spirited debate in Congress about whether these irrational creatures most of y'all, will the union dissolve if you're given the vote, right? And we've done a 180 in a relatively short period of time, 150 years. We've done a 180 in our understanding of how human beings interact with one another. I agree completely with Leonardo da Vinci that the time is not too far off when we will all recognize, when society will recognize that the murder and suffering of other animals is just as revolting to the conscience as the murder and slaughter of other human beings. And you all are the vanguard. This is the 21st century social justice movement. So pat yourselves on the back and let's all get out there and advocate on behalf of farm animals. Thank you.